Hey everyone, thanks so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Luffy tries to live a normal school life while hiding the truth about his powerful family. A millionaire father, a strict principal grandfather, and a famous singer brother. Keeping this secret is his way of escaping expectations. But when Nami transfers in, her sharp instincts slowly uncover the truth behind Luffy's quiet nature. As trust grows between them, Luffy must decide whether staying hidden is worth losing someone who sees him for who he truly is. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Irremovable Stains by Unicorn Popcorn. Foin. Respect to author.
Chapter 1. Everything except one thing. Sun was shining brightly above a city called New World. It was a huge city, the capital of a big state called Grand Line. But this isn't a story about the city, this is a story about a boy who lives there. Luffy, yelled a blond boy in suit, walking towards the lockers where a black-haired boy stood. The said black-haired boy, Luffy, turned his head towards the voice, closing his locker door. "What is it, Sanji?" he asked from the blonde called Sanji. Sanji opened his bag and took something out of it. "You forgot your lunch, idiot," he said, handing the lunchbox to Luffy. Their school, Raftel, did have a cafeteria, but Luffy and his friends preferred homemade lunches that were, of course, all made by Sanji. "Ah, I knew I forgot something. Thanks, Sanji," the young boy yelled, taking the lunch. Sanji sighed. "No problem, Luffy, just don't forget it, Aga." Sanji was cut off by Luffy, who yelled, "Oh, there's Zoro." "Oi Zoro, over here." Sanji turned his head and his eyes locked with their green-haired roommate, Roronoa Zoro. He was wearing dark green pants, white t-shirt and a dark green scarf tied around his left arm. "Hey Luffy," he yelled, coming towards them, "and the shitty cook, too," he mumbled, meaning Sanji. "You got a problem, Marimo?" Sanji asked. "Yeah, you," Zoro answered. Time seemed to freeze as these two glared at each other murderously. "Don't start to fight in the hallway, you'll anger Ms. Hina again." Zoro and Sanji turned their heads towards the voice, Zoro with look that he wanted to kill somebody and Sanji with hearts in his eyes. "Your will is my law, Tashigi Swan," Sanji told to the woman with sing-song voice. Tashigi was a young woman about their age with glasses, almost shoulder-length dark blue hair and no sense of fashion. She always did what she was told and never broke rules, so it was probably needless to say that she was many teachers' favorite. "I don't care what that crazy bitch thinks," Zoro muttered, but Tashigi heard him. "Do not insult Ms. Hina," she barked. Ms. Black Gauge Hina was one of the teachers, a very strict pink-haired woman. "That's going to take a while," Luffy whispered to Sanji. "Zoro, we'll go ahead." "Sure," Zoro said, watching the other two leave as he started to argue with Tashigi. XXXXX. "There you two are. Where's Zoro?" asked a black-haired boy with a long nose when Sanji and Luffy arrived. "Fighting with Tashigi Swan." Again, Sanji growled, sitting down under a tree where they usually ate lunch. Luffy sat down too and asked, "Hey Usopp, where's Chopper?" The long-nosed boy, Usopp, answered, "Stayed behind to help a teacher, he'll be here soon." "Okay," Luffy said and started to eat with the other two. Their little gang had 8 members in total, but only 5 of them, Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp and Chopper, went to Raftel High. Luffy was always happy, carefree boy who was a second-year student. Usopp was in same grade with their gang's leader Luffy and was teacher Usopp's son. He was a bit of coward but still a good person and Luffy's best friend along with Zoro, who was in 3rd grade with Sanji and Tashigi. Zoro had trained swordsmanship in Tashigi's father's dojo since he was 8 with Tashigi's now dead twin sister Kuina. Tashigi was a swordsman too, but Zoro's sworn enemy. Sanji was the cook of the group, also known as the pervert of the group, and the gentleman of the group. Cook of the group was what everyone called him, pervert of the group was a nickname given by Zoro, and gentleman of the group was what he liked to call himself. He was a good person who cared for all the member of the group even though he was often fighting with Zoro. And then there was Tony Chopper, first-year student and the group's youngest. Chopper was what he was called by his friends though. He was only 14 years old, but a real little genius who might have something to do with the fact that his parents were doctors. "Hey, there he is," Sanji yelled, waving to Chopper who waved back. "Sorry it took so long guys, I was helping the teacher." The small boy said. He was only 14, yes, but he was small even for a 14-year-old. He was born in Africa so he had brown skin that almost matched his brown hair. "Yeah, we heard from Usopp," Sanji said. Chopper took out his lunch and asked, "Where's Zoro?" "Fighting with Tashigi." Again. "Yep," everyone said in unison. "Usopp-san." Usopp turned his head towards the voice and saw 2 blonde girls coming towards them. "Hi Kaya, Margaret," he said. Shorter one of the two, Kaya, had blonde hair that reached her shoulders and was wearing a yellow dress. She was Usopp's girlfriend. Margaret was a little taller than Kaya and had short hair. She got herself in trouble often, mostly because of her too revealing clothes. "Can we eat here today?" Hancock and her sisters took our usual spot, Kaya asked. "Sure," the guys replied and the girls sat down. "Have you boys heard the latest big news?" Margaret asked excitedly. "What news?" Zoro asked, finally arriving. All guys turned their heads towards Margaret, interested in what she had to say. "The hottest guy in history is going to come to our school next month." Margaret squealed. Silence. "Okay, who's Margaret drooling over now?" Usopp asked from his girlfriend, making her giggle. "Very funny, Usopp," Margaret said with a pout, making the guys laugh. "So who is it?" Chopper asked. "The famous singer, handsome Portgas D. Ace." Margaret squealed. Luffy's face dropped. "I've heard of him," Chopper said, "he sings really well." "Yeah, and he's really handsome too," Margaret said, making Kaya nod. "More handsome than me?" Usopp asked. The girls looked away and the guys laughed at Usopp's face. "He's not that special," Luffy muttered, making the others turn to him. "Oh yes he is," Margaret protested, "ask any girl and the answer is same." "We'll see about that," Luffy muttered. "Hey, Vivi," he yelled, getting the attention of a beautiful blue-haired girl. "Come over here," Luffy yelled. The girl came, a bit confused. Her name was Nefertari Vivi, and she used to be the richest girl in school before her father went bankrupt. But unlike Hancock, the second richest, she was kind and good-hearted young woman already back then and still was. She was, in a way, part of Luffy's gang. She was a good friend of theirs, but wasn't really counted as an official member. "Yes," she asked. "So Vivi, have you heard the news?" Kaya asked. Vivi blinked. Then, "Are you talking about the singer that is coming to our school next month?" "Bingo," Margaret said, "he's really hot, right?" Vivi blushed at Margaret's bluntness. "Well, agues so," she said, "but what does it matter? Good looks can only give a good first impression, they don't really tell anything about the person." Margaret frowned as Luffy said, "See. But you do agree with me that he's awesome, right?" The blonde insisted, making Kaya shook her head. Vivi thought for a moment. "Well, he's good at his job and hot like you said, but it doesn't tell if he's a good person or not," she said. Luffy laughed at Margaret's face. "Well, what do you know, you've never even dated anyone, and your taste might just be bad," Margaret told to her own defense. "So Margaret, have you ever dated anyone?" Zoro asked with a smirk, knowing that she hasn't. Margaret blushed and the others laughed. They were all more or less friends even though it didn't always look like it. "I actually have something I need to tell you," Vivi said, sitting down. "A friend of mine is going to come to our school next Monday." "Cool. Is it she or he?" Margaret asked. "She. Her name is Nami and she's moving here with her sister," Vivi told. "Well, this is what I call good news," Sanji said with a bright smile. "Is she hot?" "Is that all that you can think of?" Zoro asked, earning a glare from Sanji. "Well, I don't really know about that," Vivi said, sweat dropping. The others laughed and their lunch break went on with happy chatter all around. XXXXX. Zoro glanced at Luffy every once in a while when they were walking home. "Something bothering you, Luffy?" he finally managed to ask. "Nope," Luffy said quickly, turning his head. He was obviously lying. Zoro sighed. "It's about Ace, right?" Zoro asked. Portgas D. Ace, the famous singer, was Luffy's adopted older brother. Only two members in the gang besides Luffy knew this, the other one being Zoro. "Yeah," Luffy said with a sigh. "There was no use in trying to lie to Zoro. I don't get it, why didn't he tell me?" "I suppose that's not all," Zoro said, making Luffy nod. They knew each other too well. "It's just, Ace is so popular, but I'm not," he said. Zoro raised an eyebrow, asking, "But do you need to be popular when you have us?" "That's not what I meant," Luffy said quickly. "Like you saw today, girls are always swooning over Ace. I'm not saying that I want that, but it would be nice to have a girlfriend someday." Zoro stared at him, speechless. "I never knew you even wanted a girlfriend," he said finally. In his opinion, Luffy had never shown any that kind of interest towards the opposite sex. "You thought I'm a gay?" Luffy asked, sounding slightly offended. Zoro laughed at this. "No," he said, "and to be honest I'm surprised that you even know what it means." "Hey," Luffy yelled, punching Zoro in the arm. Zoro just laughed again, saying, "Just kidding. And don't you worry, Luffy, I'm sure that someday you'll meet a girl who's crazy enough to date you," he said with a serious face. Luffy smiled. "Yeah, wait, what?" he said, registering what his friend had said. "Zoro." "Yeah," Zoro asked, starting to run away. "You're so dead," Luffy yelled, going after his friend. "You gotta catch me first," Zoro yelled. And so the two young men run in the streets, all the way to their home. Chapter 2, Moving into the new apartment. An orange car parked into the parking lot of a modern apartment building. The door to the car's front seat opened and out went a young woman, her shoulder-length hair same color as the car. She had red-brown eyes and she was wearing white miniskirt and dark blue t-shirt. It's so hot in here, the woman said, waving her hand in front of her face. She had lived in a warm place her whole life, but too hot was always too hot. Stop complaining, Nami, another woman said, coming out from the car's driver's seat. She had purple hair, slightly shorter than Nami's, and a strange purple tattoo from her chest to her right shoulder. Her attire was simple, gray jeans and a yellow top along with sandals and red ribbon tied to her hair. The orange-haired woman, Nami, turned to face the other one. Nojiko, no need to get mad, she said, it's just so hot in here. The other woman, Nojiko, was her older sister. Someone who didn't know it would never be able to tell, but that was no wonder since they were both adopted from different families. I know, Nojiko said, closing the door, but it's not much hotter than back at home. Yeah, but it's still a bit hotter, Nami said with a sigh, already wiping sweat away from her forehead. Nojiko laughed. Let's go inside, Gen should already be there, she said. Gen was a nickname for Genzo, who was kind of like their father figure. They had been adopted by a single woman who had been close friends with him for years, and now they pretty much thought the two of them as their parents even though they never called them mom or dad. Yeah, let's go, Nami agreed, and they left after Nojiko locked the car doors. The building had 5 floors, their apartment being in the 4th. It didn't have an elevator, so they had to use stairs, but they didn't really mind. You hear Gen? Nojiko asked as she unlocked the door to their apartment. In the kitchen, he yelled. Nojiko and Nami went inside, careful to not step on any of the boxes. Hi Gen, Nami said as she got to the kitchen with her sister. Gen looked up at her. He was a man with black hair that was starting to get gray and black eyes. He was the sheriff of their small home village and was now wearing his brown uniform. Took you too long enough, he said, most of the furniture is already in their places, but we still need to handle the ones that come into your rooms. Good, now it won't take too long, Nami said with a smile. Gen glared at her, saying, easy for you to say, brat. You haven't been here the whole morning. Gee Gen, relax a little would you? Nojiko said with a laugh. Gen sighed and stood up from the floor and asked, so whose room do we start with? Mine, both girls said at the same time, blinking afterwards. Nojiko's room it is then, Gen decided, leaving the kitchen. What? Hey, Nami protested. Better luck next time Nami, Nojiko said, patting her little sister on the shoulder and leaving to her room. Nami stuck her tongue out at her sister and went after her. Hours later they had gotten all furniture in their places. Well, I better leave now so I can get home before the night, Gen said. They were in Nami's room since it was the last one they organized. You're right, Nojiko said, thanks for the help. The two women chorused. Gen nodded, leaving the apartment. I'm so tired, Nami said, luckily tomorrow is Sunday. Yeah, Nojiko said, I'm hungry, should we go eat outside? I don't feel like cooking. Sure, let's go. We can start unpacking later, her little sister agreed, but first I need to take a shower. Yeah, me too. XXXXX. Since Nami didn't want to spend too much money, they simply went for hamburgers into McDonald's, which was only 1 kilometer away from their apartment. You sure spare your money in every place you can, Nojiko said with a laugh, it's not like we're poor anymore. Yeah, but you know that I'll need a lot of money when I graduate from high school, Nami defended herself, taking a bite from her hamburger. I know, for your dream, Nojiko said, taking a sip from her drink. Nami was about to eat a couple of fries, but then she got a text message. I wonder who, she mumbled, pulling her cell phone out. The message was from Vivi and it said, meet you in the park near the school tomorrow at 12 a.m. Nami shrugged and texted back, sure. Who is it? Nojiko asked, finishing her hamburger. Vivi, Nami replied, I'm seeing her tomorrow in the park at 12 a.m. You sure you can find your way there? Nojiko asked, munching on a fry. Nami looked at her funnily. Name one, even one time I've actually gotten lost, she said. Nojiko laughed. Sorry, can't think of any, she said, making her little sister laugh. Those so. XXXXX. Next morning Nami woke up from the floor. She couldn't believe she had fallen asleep while unpacking. And on top of that she still haven't unpacked everything. Damn it, Nami groaned, looking at the clock on the wall. It said 10:30 a.m. I slept long, she thought, deciding to go take a shower. Only 10 minutes later she came back to her room with a towel around her body and hair. She took a good look at her room. It wasn't big, but not small either. The wooden floor was painted with simple white and the wallpaper was bright green. On the opposite wall of the door there was a window with bright orange curtains and a table under it. Next to the table and the window was a bookshelf which was almost full. Against the same wall as the door was in were a big bed and a small table next to it. And against the fourth wall was a closet that held Nami's clothes. Now what should I wear today? Nami mumbled to herself, walking to her closet and opening it. She took out pink underwear, green top and dark blue shorts and then closed the closet. There was no need for socks in a day like this. She dropped her towel on the floor and dressed. She picked up the towel and walked over to her bed, dropping both towels on it. She took her hairbrush from the small table and brushed her hair. Damn it, Nami thought, I forgot to put my mirror onto the wall. Nami sighed, deciding to use the bathroom's mirror. She could put the mirror up later. She looked at herself from the bathroom mirror, making sure she was looking fine, and then went to the kitchen to eat breakfast. She noticed a note on the table and took it. It said, "I'm going to see my new boss." It was from Nojiko. She had gotten a job from the nearby bar and was working night shifts. So Noj went to check her working place. Nami thought. She worked too, but she was able to handle her job from home. She turned gathered information into maps. She had practiced it ever since she was a child. She had also studied navigation for years and was pretty good at it. And she had an excellent sense of direction. Nami sighed. She threw the note into a trash can, made herself a sandwich, poured a glass of orange juice for her and sat down. She ate quietly, all kind of thoughts going through her head. What kind of people were Vivi's friends? The ones she always talked about. Would they accept her even though she could be, like Vivi said, really violent sometimes? It's not like she couldn't get her own friends, but she'd just like to get along with her best friend's friends. And the most important thing she wanted to find out was this: was Vivi telling the truth when she said she didn't have a boyfriend? If she was, Nami would make sure she'd hook her up with someone. And if she was lucky, she might be able to hook her sister up with one of Vivi's friends, too. As far as she knew, neither her sister or Vivi never had a boyfriend, and she was planning on fixing that. Nami giggled, knowing it wouldn't be easy. Vivi is really shy, and as far as she knew, her sister had a really weird taste in men. Well, life is never easy, Nami thought, finishing her breakfast. She decided to watch TV until it was time to go see Vivi. She knew where the park was. She had checked it from a map last night. She dropped herself on the sofa in the living room and turned the TV on. XXXXX. Vivi sat on leaned against a tree in the park, looking at her clock. 11:52, I'm a bit early, she thought. And there was always a chance that Nami would arrive a little later than agreed since she didn't know the area. Vivi. Never mind, there was no chance something like that would happen. Vivi turned her gaze to the left and saw an orange-haired woman coming towards her. She smiled, saying, "Long time no see, Nami." "Yeah," Nami agreed, going to give her friend a hug. "How have you been?" "Fine, thanks. You?" she asked. "Nothing to complain about," Nami answered. "Our new apartment is nice and Nojiko got a job too, so we'll be able to handle our rent." "That's good to hear," Vivi said as they started to walk out of the park. "How about your father? Is he doing well?" Nami asked, making Vivi nod. "Yes, he is doing surprisingly well and has been on his feet for a long time already," she said with a smile. "Great," Nami said with a smile, stopping at the edge of the park. "Where to?" "Well, I thought that you'd probably want to know the city a bit better, and after that we could go shopping since you want anyway," Vivi told. Nami had excellent memory, especially when it came to remembering her surroundings. "Sounds good to me," Nami said, and they left the park. They walked around the town a bit, Vivi telling Nami what shops and coffee houses were good and which ones, well, weren't. Of course they couldn't go through the whole town, but the area between Nami and Nojiko's apartment and the school was the top priority anyway. "I think we could eat lunch here," Vivi said, looking at the restaurant they were standing in front of. "Sure, but let's eat something light since we're going to go shopping," Nami said, and Vivi agreed, so they went inside. They took a table next to the window and sat down. Vivi ordered the day's lunch, which was vegetable soup, and Nami chicken and rice. "So Vivi, do you have a boyfriend yet?" Nami asked as they waited for their lunches. Vivi sighed, she knew her friend would ask this sooner or later. "No, I don't," she answered. "So how are things going between you and Arlong?" Nami's smile fell, making Vivi realize she shouldn't have asked that. "We broke up," the orange-haired woman muttered. "I'm sorry," Vivi said. "What exactly happened?" "It was nothing, we just," Nami paused, thinking how to put it, "wanted different things from life," she finally said. Vivi nodded in understanding. She knew Nami's dream and how important it was to her. If Arlong hadn't accepted that, it was no wonder to her why they had broke up. "I see," Vivi said, not wanting to seem rude by asking too much. Right then a waiter came to them with their orders. "Enjoy your food," she said cheerfully, and left after the two girls thanked her. They ate in silence until Nami asked, "So Vivi, who are these good friends of yours again?" "Well, there's Koza, who you've already met a couple of times," Vivi started. "Oh yeah, the cute blonde guy. Isn't he your childhood friend or something like that?" "Yeah," Vivi said with a nod. "And then there's Luffy and his gang." Nami raised an eyebrow. Vivi was friends with some gang. Now that's something she didn't expect. "Not that kind of gang," Vivi said quickly as she noticed Nami's face. "Everyone just calls them Luffy's gang, or Straw Hat Gang, since they are always together." "I see. Okay, so their boss is Luffy. He's in second grade and has a cheerful personality," that's how Vivi said it, but others called him simple-minded. "Then there's Zoro, a quiet and sometimes a bit rude guy from the third grade, but he's still a good person. Sanji is a real gentleman, but a bit weird. He is in same class with Zoro." Vivi kept a little break as she ate a bit of her soup before continuing. "Then there's Usopp from Luffy's class. He's unique. Nami laughed, figuring out that that was Vivi's polite way of saying someone was a bit weird. Vivi waited for her friend to stop laughing before continuing. And then there's Chopper, in his first year like me. He's a nice little guy. Little guy? Nami asked. Yeah, well, he's really small for a 14-year-old and acts a bit childishly, Vivi explained. Okay, wait, 14 years old? Nami asked. Vivi nodded with a laugh. Yeah, he's a little genius, 14 and already in high school, the blue-haired woman told and continued eating. Okay, so all of these friends of yours are guys? Nami asked, taking a bite of her food while waiting for her friend's answer. Well, all of the closest ones are, but of course I'm friends with some girls, too, Vivi said, telling Nami shortly about Margaret and Kaya. After the girls finished eating they went shopping like they had planned. In the end Vivi ended up with a bag of clothes and Nami with 2 bags of clothes and a third one for books, papers, etc. Well, I'll see you tomorrow at school, Nami said to Vivi as they left to separate directions. See ya, Vivi yelled. While walking back home the only thing Nami could think about was how she would fit in her new school. Chapter 3, First Day at the New School. Luffy yawned, getting out of his bed. He looked at the clock, 7:54 a.m. The school started at 9 a.m. sharp and the walk there didn't take very long so he had time. He knew that Sanji was up by now to make their breakfast and lunches and Usopp and Chopper would wake up soon so he needed to hurry if he wanted to go to shower before them. Zoro always woke up just in time for breakfast and went to shower after it and was always ready to leave just in time. Frankie on the other hand usually woke up for breakfast just like Zoro and then went to his work. Now you're probably wondering about 2 things. Who is Frankie and why do these 6 people live in the same house? Well, the answer is quite simple. Luffy and his gang lived in a house that Frankie owned, each one of them had rented their own rooms. Why did Frankie rent rooms from his house to school kids, you ask? Well, you see, he was a mechanic and just loved to build stuff. He had built himself a way too big house and while he could pay all the bills on his own if he wanted to, it got a bit lonely without a roommate. And why Luffy's gang? Well, it was hard to find a place where the hyperactive Straw Hat would live without causing headache to the neighbors and Frankie was Usopp's old friend so his house did just fine. Luffy got in the bathroom just before Usopp, leaving the other boy mumble something in the hallway. Luffy got there first again. Chopper asked as he came out of his room. Yeah, as usual, Usopp confirmed with a frown. Luckily for them Luffy never took too much time in the bathroom. Why is that, you ask? Well, before Luffy did spend lot of time in bathroom and when he came out Usopp joked that if he spends too much time in the bathroom he'd turn into a girl. It happened when they were kids and since nobody else knew about it except for Chopper who also believed it, nobody had told Luffy it wasn't true. Soon Luffy did come out and tackled Usopp on his way out so that Chopper could get in before the older boy did. Hey, Usopp protested as Chopper closed and locked the door. Luffy just laughed goodheartedly, walking back to his room. XXXXX. Nami looked around, Nojiko walking by her side. They were heading school and Nami was looking around wishing that she could spot Vivi or even Koza. She wasn't shy or anything and she did have her sister with her, but most people know that going to a completely new school is never that easy that someone would think. Nami, Nojiko, Vivi yelled, coming towards them with her friend Koza. Koza was a year older than Vivi. He had short blonde hair, a small scar across his left eye and he had well-built muscles. He didn't really follow fashion, but his clothes did always look good on him. He usually dressed in jeans or brown pants, a simple t-shirt, sometimes a blue scarf around his neck and always a brown long coat, which was tied to his waist in hot days like today. Hey Vivi. And Koza, wasn't it? Nami asked with a pause, just to be sure. Koza nodded. You and Koza have the same first class, Vivi informed Nami, so he can show you the way. That's nice, Nami said with a smile. Vivi, Nojiko said, getting the younger girl's attention, do you know someone from my class? Unlike Nami, I get pretty easily lost in new and crowded places. Well, I do know some of your new classmates, Vivi said, thinking, why don't we continue our way to school and check if we can find someone from your class from in front of the school? Okay, Nojiko said and the 4 of them continued walking. Soon enough they arrived to the school. Well, this was a good timing, Vivi said, noticing a familiar third-year student a few meters away, Tashigi-san. The woman turned her head to their direction, smiling and waving a bit as she saw Vivi. No sense of fashion, was Nami's first thought as she saw the older girl. Tashigi came to them and asked, what is it, Vivi? Without waiting a reply she said, oh, these must be the new students. Yes, Vivi said, introducing the 2 other girls, this is my old friend Nami and her sister Nojiko. Nami's in Koza's class and Nojiko is in yours. This is Tashigi, the top student of the 3rd year. Koza rolled his eyes at the top student thing. Why did it have to be mentioned? Yes, so if you need some help just ask for me, Tashigi said with a smile. Well, actually I'd need help to get into my first class, Nojiko told. Alright, follow me, Tashigi said, do you need any help? No thanks, I'm going with Koza and I don't get lost that easily anyway, Nami told. Okay, Aegis, I'll see you later then, Tashigi said as she left with Nojiko. Vivi, a small boy yelled, running towards the 3 people that were left. Tony-kun, Vivi yelled as she noticed him. Vivi was the only one who called him that, everyone else said Chopper. He stopped right in front of Vivi, asking, have you seen the others? They left when I was still looking for my math book. No, I haven't, but we need to go to class soon anyway, she told, suddenly remembering that Nami and Koza were still there. Oh, she said, Tony-kun, this is my friend Nami. She is in same class with Koza. Nami, this is my classmate Tony. Nice to meet you, Nami said as they shook hands. We should go that we won't be late, Vivi said. Chopper nodded and they left for their class. We should get going too, Koza said. Nami nodded and followed him. XXXXX. Once the class had already started, Nojiko looked around herself. She was sitting at the front next to Tashigi, so it wasn't that easy. When she came to the class she noticed a beautiful black-haired girl, who by her appearance might be the class's diva. But hey, no judging before knowing. There were 2 guys, blonde one and a green-haired one, in the back who just didn't stop arguing. The teacher had told them to shut up 3 times already. XXXXX. Nami and Koza got to the class at the same time as their teacher, who just happened to be the most carefree of all the teachers, Shanks. Once Nami had introduced herself to the class, Shanks told her to go take the empty seat next to Usopp. There was only one empty seat in the class, so it was easy to guess which one of the other students was Usopp. Wasn't he one of Vivi's friends? Nami thought, glancing at the long nose as she sat on her seat. After that the teacher started his lesson and Nami found it hard to pay attention to what he was saying. She just couldn't focus. Maybe I just got too little sleep last night. XXXXX. Finally, I'm starving, Luffy yelled as he and Usopp headed for lunch. When wouldn't you be? Shanks, the red-haired, one-armed teacher asked from behind them. Hi Shanks, what's up? Luffy asked with a grin. You failed your test again, that's what, Shanks said, flipping Luffy's hat off of his head. Hey, Luffy yelled, catching his hat before it hit the floor. I'm serious Luffy, Shanks said with a serious tone, which didn't happen too often. You need help with your geography classes. Yeah, Luffy mumbled, but don't ask help from Usopp or Yasuo, they're almost as bad as you. Shanks said, wanting to cheer Luffy up. Hey, Usopp protested, I've always passed all my tests. Yeah, barely, Luffy agreed, laughing with Shanks. At least neither of you is as bad as the Marimo, Sanji said, coming to them with Zoro. Shut up, Zoro yelled at him and the 4 others laughed. Maybe Luffy could help you, Shanks said, making the other 3 laughs even harder. Why you? Well I better get going, Shanks said, walking away. Don't run away, Zoro screamed. You'll get your revenge later, Usopp said, let's go to eat. Zoro glared at him, but agreed with a sigh when Luffy yelled, food. Hey Zoro, Usopp whispered, want to see something funny? Sure, Zoro said with a shrug. Hey Sanji, Usopp started, did you know that we have a new, hot girl in our class? You do, Sanji asked as they started to walk. Yeah, and guess what she said about what type of guys she likes? Usopp said, holding down his growing smirk. What was it? Sanji asked, hearts in his eyes. She hates blondes, Usopp said, watching how Sanji sunk down to the floor in despair. You were right, this is fun, Zoro half whispered to the now laughing long nose. When did you speak with her, Usopp? I didn't notice, Luffy said, making Usopp froze. Luffy was going to ruin this. What? Sanji asked, turning towards Usopp who was sweating. You shitty liar, Sanji yelled, starting to beat the younger boy up. That's funny too, Zoro said as he and Luffy continued walking, leaving the other 2 behind. When they arrived to their regular lunch break place under the big tree they noticed that Chopper was already there and so were Vivi, her friend Koza and someone else. It didn't take long for Luffy to realize that it was the new girl from his class and Zoro realized it too since Vivi had told them about her earlier. Hey guys, Chopper yelled, waving as he noticed them. Luffy and Zoro walked up to them and Luffy immediately sat next to Chopper, but Zoro sat a bit further away since he knew that Sanji would want to sit close the women. Ah, you started eating without us? Luffy asked with a pout, looking at Chopper's lunchbox. You always do that Lu, Zoro said as the smaller boy's defense. But that's completely different, Luffy protested. How so? Zoro asked, raising an eyebrow. It just is, Luffy said. Idiot, Koza mumbled, earning a glare from Vivi. Koza, just for you to know, we are the only ones that are allowed to call him idiot, Zoro said to Koza, who just rolled his eyes. Yay wait, what? Zoro, Luffy yelled, making the green-haired man and the others laugh. Luffy pouted again, opening his lunchbox. So, who are you again? Zoro asked, turning his attention to Nami. Sorry, I forgot to introduce her, Vivi said, realizing her mistake. This is Nami from the 2nd grade. They are Luffy from your grade and Zoro from Nojiko's grade. And those 2, she pointed at Sanji and bloody Usopp that were coming towards them, or Sanji and Usopp. Nami raised an eyebrow at the bloody long nose. What the heck happened to him? Wah, what happened to you Usopp? Chopper panicked, running over to his friend. That's what Hina would like to know, too, Ms. Hina said, walking towards the group. Sanji happened, Usopp told, glaring at the blonde who sat down and started to eat his lunch. Hina glared at him, saying, Hina is not happy. Hina is never happy, Zoro said, making Luffy and Usopp burst out laughing. Hina turned her glare to Zoro, asking, do you want to say something, Roronoa? I think I already did, Zoro stated simply, making Usopp and Luffy laugh even harder. Keep your thoughts to yourself, Roronoa, Hina said, and you, Blackleg, are getting a warning. With that she left. Zoro glanced at Luffy and Usopp and then started to laugh. Looks like Ms. Hina had a good day today. Good day, Nami asked confusedly from Vivi. Yeah, Koza answered for his friend, usually she drags all troublemakers, especially those guys, to the principal's office immediately. Yeah, but always only one at the time, Usopp cut in. Why is that by the way? Koza asked, but Usopp shrugged. No idea, so Vivi, you're actually friends with the school's worst troublemakers? Nami asked with a smirk. The guys went silent, knowing how Vivi always panicked when someone thought bad way about them or her. However, to their surprise, Vivi didn't panic or even start explaining anything this time. The boys looked at her weirdly, wanting an explanation. I've known Nami for years, she herself was a school bully, Vivi explained. I was not, I just beat up some annoying boys, Nami defended herself. The others' sweat dropped, thinking, same thing. Zoro sighed as Chopper came to hide behind his back. He did that pretty often. Just for you to know, they aren't bullies, Koza said, they're just the biggest troublemakers in this school's history. So what? You get into trouble too, Luffy said. Not nearly as much as you do, Koza shot back. Don't blame him, he was probably just badly raised, Sanji said, finally starting to eat. Yeah, Luffy said, you're admitting it, the others yelled. Luffy ignored them and turned his attention to Nami, finally fully taking in her appearance. She had her shoulder-length orange hair in pigtails, she was wearing white t-shirt and jeans. She seemed to be about same height as him and was really skinny. So Nami-chan, why did you come to this school? Sanji asked. She got kicked out of her last school, Koza said, earning a glare from Nami. Koza's only joking, Vivi said quickly, not wanting Nami and Koza to start a fight. I just wanted to move into the city and so did my sister, so we did just that, Nami replied. What a boring reason, Luffy pouted, earning a kick from Sanji. You'll get in trouble again, Sanji-kun, Vivi said, trying to calm the blonde down. Don't worry Vivi dear, I can handle this, Sanji said, glaring at Zoro as the swordsman chuckled. You have something to say, Marimo? The annoyed blonde asked. Not anything you would be able to understand, Arrowcook, Zoro said. You want to fight? Don't start again, Vivi muttered, but was ignored as Zoro yelled, bring it on. Okay, I've decided. Luffy yelled randomly, causing Zoro and Sanji to trip over their own legs. What the heck are you planning now? They both yelled. Luffy turned to face them, saying, we're going to have a welcoming party to Nami and the other new girl next Friday. He yelled. Great idea, Sanji yelled, going to his love mode. Why? Usopp asked. Because we haven't had a party for a while, Luffy told, not bothering or realizing to try cover the truth. But won't your landlord gets mad? Vivi asked. I don't think Frankie will mind, Chopper said, knowing that Frankie liked partying too. You're coming, right? Luffy asked from Nami who everyone were now looking at. Yeah, sure, Nami replied but couldn't help but think, what have I gotten myself into? Bring your sister too, Sanji said with a grin. Sure, in case she doesn't have work then, Nami replied. Where does she work? Vivi asked. Nami thought for a moment, what was that bar's name again? Oh yeah, it was. In Party's bar, it's near our apartment, as Nami said this Luffy choked in his food and his 5 friends laughed. Seriously? Luffy yelled. Yeah, Nami said, asking, why? The owner of the bar, Makino, is an old friend of Luffy's, Zoro answered for his friend. You better watch what you do and say over there, Usopp continued for him, for some reason the principal goes there pretty often. The principal? Why? Nami asked. Everyone, except Luffy who was shaking, shrugged. Have no idea, Zoro said. Maybe he's secretly a drunk. Koza suggested, but raised an eyebrow when nobody laughed. What? Koza, behind you, Usopp said, pointing behind the blonde. Koza blinked, but when he heard a cough from behind him he went pale. So Koza, who are we talking about? The principal asked, anger clear in his voice. Nami raised an eyebrow as she saw Luffy stand up and run away from the scene. When he was out of sight Nami turned around to look at the principal she had never met before. He was a big, muscular man with a scar over his left eye. He was already old, or at least his white hair made him seem like it. But his attitude did not, he seemed to be lively like he'd still be under his 40s. Teacher Shanks, Koza said, making it sound like a question. He used Shanks' name because anyone could see that he and the principal didn't get along. The principal's angry face eventually chanced into a thoughtful one. Well, he is the kind of guy the first would imagine in a bar every other night, he said, making the student's sweat drop. So you're new here? He suddenly blurted out, looking at Nami. Yeah, Nami half asked and half said. The principal laughed. Looks like you're now more or less in the school's worst delinquent gang. He yelled. Is he high? They heard a whisper a couple of meters away. Most likely, another replied. Everyone looked at the source of the voices, seeing none other than Teacher Shanks and his big-nosed friend Buffy, who one of the school's cleaners. You two have something to say? The principal asked, cracking his knuckles. Not at all, sir, Shanks said, his tone betraying his words. The two seemed to have a staring contest while Buggy inched away from Shanks, just in case a fight would break out. Brat, the principal said after a while and walked away. After he was out of sight, Shanks, Buggy and the boys laughed. I wouldn't have been surprised if he had actually hit me, Shanks laughed, making the girl's sweat drop. Isn't he a teacher? Nami asked from her friend, who just laughed a bit nervously. Would have done good to you, last time he was able to shut you up for a couple of hours, Buggy sneered and got hit by Shanks. Everyone's sweat dropped again. Are they insane? Nami asked. Well, the principal is the worst. Nami turned around and saw Luffy standing behind him. Where did you run off to? Nami asked. Shanks, hearing her question, said, now that's an interesting story. You see, Luffy. Shut up, Shanks. Luffy screamed, attacking Shanks with his fists clenched. The teacher just laughed and dodged all the straw-hated boys' attacks. Nami just stared at them and finally turned to the other boys with a questioning look in her eyes. Luffy's known Shanks for years, but none of us really know how. Usopp told, they're close and fight all the time. I suppose Shanks is kind of like a father figure to him, Zoro said while looking at them, taking a bite from his lunch. A father figure? What gave you that idea? Sanji asked, glancing at Luffy and Shanks who were still fighting. Luffy once told me that his father has been busy with his work as long as he can remember. He doesn't know him very well, Zoro said, but he does know Shanks and Shanks knows him, they've been good friends for years. Kind of like Sanji and that old cook Zeph. Usopp asked, making Zoro nod. Something like that, he said. Well, that explains a lot, Sanji said. Didn't he once say that he got that hat of his from teacher too? Vivi asked. Yeah, Zoro confirmed, it's his treasure. Treasure? Nami asked, confused. How could someone keep an old worn-out hat as a treasure? Well, she probably wasn't one to talk since the orange crows were her treasure, but still. Yeah, Usopp said, in elementary school he beat up one boy who made fun of his hat. I remember that, Sanji said with a chuckle. Nami's sweat dropped. Is there something wrong with his head? She muttered, looking at the raven-haired boy again. Probably, everyone, even Vivi, said in unison. What are you guys talking about? Luffy asked as he walked back to them. Nothing, Usopp said with a laugh. We should go back to our classes, Vivi said suddenly. Yeah, Sanji agreed, getting up and so did everyone else. Don't forget to tell Nojiko about the party, Vivi said to Nami before walking off with Chopper. I won't, Nami said as she started to walk to her class with Koza, Luffy and Usopp. What class do we have now? Koza asked. Math, Nami replied, making Koza and Luffy sigh. Don't start complaining, I'm the one everyone's always mad at. Usopp hissed. Why's that? Nami asked. Our math teacher is Yasop, Usopp's father, Koza told. That guy goes on and on about his adventures when he was younger and about Usopp. Adventures? Nami asked, raising an eyebrow as they entered their class. Yeah, Luffy said, sitting down onto his seat. He, Shanks and bunch of other people used to travel around the world investigating areas nobody else had enough courage to go into. Nami blinked. She would never had thought that their teacher was that Shanks, one of those famous people who traveled around the world finding new species and all. Do you know why did he quit? Nami asked, noticing how Luffy looked away as she asked this. Usopp shrugged. Probably because he lost his arm, Koza said. Nami nodded in understanding, that did sound like a good reason. It couldn't be easy walking around jungles and other dangerous places with only one arm. Okay everyone, into your seats. Yasop said as he came to the class. Everyone quickly obeyed, noticing that the teacher was in a really bad mood. That didn't happen often, but when it did everyone knew better than to annoy him. What are you so mad about, Yasop? Did Shanks put sugar in your coffee again? Well, everyone except Luffy. Yasop glared at him, saying, yes he did, but that's not the reason. Then what is? Luffy asked, titling his head to side. Usopp shook his head and the others thought, don't annoy him more, idiot. You want to know what it is? Yasop asked, annoyed. Half of the class failed the test last week, that's what it is. Silence. That test was too difficult and you did it like that on purpose. Most of the class yelled. No it wasn't. Yasop yelled, hitting the table, I got full points in your age and Usopp got almost full points too. Everyone glared at Usopp, who just laughed nervously. It was good luck. He asked, sweating. This is ridiculous, Koza said. What kind of teacher makes a whole test full of questions where you need to count the best shooting distances? He does, Luffy said, pointing at Yasop. Nami's sweat dropped as the others yelled. No shit Sherlock. Tish, just so you know Koza, if Usopp doesn't count you got the highest score of the class, Usopp said, making Koza blink. Now everyone glared at him and Usopp laughed. Luffy got the lowest score didn't he? Usopp asked. Yeah, shut up, Luffy yelled, making the whole class laugh. After Usopp stopped laughing he said, alright, take out your books so we can start. Everyone obeyed and the class begun. XXXXX. What a day. Nami groaned as she and Nojiko were walking back home. How so? Nojiko asked. Well, first of all, Vivi's friends are crazy, especially one of them. He didn't shut up even once, excluding the time the principal came to the class, and on top of that he got me into trouble. Nami yelled. Nojiko laughed, saying, you would probably have gotten yourself in trouble even without his help. Nami glared at her sister, making the older woman smile apolitically. So what did he do? She asked. Nami sighed. Well, I was walking to my last class with him, Koza, and I think the third one's name was Usopp. Well, anyway, we were walking in the hallway and then those two idiots got the idea to make it a race who got into the class first. They didn't get far when the other one, Luffy I believe was his name, ran right into the porter. Ouch, Nojiko commented. Nami nodded and continued, it seems like they cause trouble often, or that's what the porter said. He seemed to really hate them. And when he noticed me and Koza he gave us a warning even though we didn't even do anything. Well, that sucks, Nojiko said. Tashigi, that girl from my class, did warn me about Vivi's friends though. Said that they're the school's worst hooligans. Can't say no to that, Nami said. Oh, and they are keeping us a welcoming party next Friday, told me to make sure you come too. Well, that can't be that bad, can it? Quote comma quote. Quote comma quote. Yeah right, both girls said, sighing as they walked back home. Chapter 4, Before the Party. Nami sat down next to Nojiko. It was Friday and a lunch break. And today Luffy and the others were going to keep the party. What's up Nami? You usually eat with Vivi and her friends, Nojiko asked. Those idiots are driving me nuts, was the orange-haired woman's reply. Doesn't surprise me, said Tashigi who was sitting across from Nojiko, so what did they do? Well, better question would be what they didn't do, the answer would be shorter, Nami told, but for example they're always loud and that Luffy tries to steal food from others every time we had lunch. Are you regretting that you agreed to go to the party? Nojiko asked, getting a look from her sister that said, hell yeah. But you're still going there, aren't you? Tashigi asked, sipping her drink. Agues I have to, I don't want to disappoint Vivi, Nami said, and I have a feeling that they, especially Luffy, wouldn't accept it, no, since I already agreed once. Agues I'll come too, Nojiko said. She hadn't spent time with Vivi's friends and if what Nami always told her was true she was pretty sure that she didn't even want to, but it wouldn't hurt to just go into a one party. Were you invited? Nami asked from Tashigi. She didn't know the older girl as well as her sister did since she was always with Vivi. Of course, Tashigi replied, everyone were. Who do you mean by everyone? Nojiko asked. Literally everyone from this school, Tashigi replied, causing the sisters to yell, what? They blushed as they felt many stares on their backs. Seriously, what? Nami asked again, this time with much more quiet voice. They always invite the whole school to their parties, Tashigi explained, but not nearly everyone are crazy enough to actually go there so it's never too crowded, I think. Have you ever been in their parties? Nojiko asked, making Tashigi sigh. Once, she said, and that was enough. Nami and Nojiko looked at each other with worry, now really unsure about this evening. Well, since Vivi goes there it can't be that bad, Nojiko said, but quickly asked from her sister, she's coming right? I'm pretty sure she is, Nami said. Nojiko was right, since Vivi was okay with going there it couldn't be so bad, probably. XXXXX. Way to go, shithead, you scared Nami-san away, Sanji growled to Luffy when he saw Nami walking to another table away from their tree. Why do you say it's my fault? Luffy asked, trying to steal food from Koza who slapped his hand away and said, there's one reason. And the fact he's always so loud is probably another, Usopp added. It's not like you're any better, Luffy mumbles, causing Zoro and Koza to laugh. Or maybe she got tired of somebody's flirting, Zoro said, glancing at the older blonde beside Vivi. Just what are you trying to say, shitty Marimo? Sanji asked with a glare. Are you really too stupid to realize? Zoro asks. They glare at each other, but Vivi goes between them before a fight breaks out. Don't start again, I'm sure it wasn't anyone's fault. She probably just wanted to eat with her sister for once, she said. Of course she knew that it wasn't true but she thought that by saying it she could stop the others from fighting. You think so? Chopper asked innocently, completely believing what his friend was saying. What reason would she have to lie anyway? Yes I do, Vivi said. Have you guys gotten your house ready for the party? Koza asked. Usopp nodded. Yeah, everything's ready for the evening, he said. We're gonna party. Luffy cheered. How many plates were you planning to break this time? Koza asked from the raven-haired boy, remembering their last party. Hey, I wasn't the only one who broke them. Luffy protested, pointing at Usopp and Chopper. Zoro broke some too. And that kid guy. Usopp said. I only broke 2. Zoro defended himself. Koza shook his head, muttering, today is going to be a long night. You don't need to come if you're too afraid of getting shards in your feet, Zoro said with a smirk. I'm not afraid, I'm annoyed, Koza hissed, wanting to be the one to get the last word. Sure, Zoro said, making Luffy, Usopp and Chopper laugh. Koza glared at him, but didn't find anything smart to say, so he let it be. So when is the party starting? Vivi asked. There's no time really, people just come and go when they want, Sanji said, except that Luffy's probably trying to stop people from leaving once they've come in. Most likely, the others said, and Luffy just laughed. Of course, he said, it's a party. That makes no sense, the others yelled. Luffy ignored them and asked, do you guys know how many are coming? Same people as usual, I suppose, Sanji told, finishing his lunch. Meaning the psychopaths of this school, Koza translated. You always come, too, Zoro pointed out, causing the others to laugh. You know what I meant. Koza yelled, his face red. Did he mean he's a psychopath? Zoro asked and Sanji shrugged. Dunno. XXXXX. I'm gonna take a shower, Nami mumbled as she got home with Nojiko. So will I, so don't take too long, Nojiko said, lazily throwing her back into a corner. Not longer than you would, Nami said, sticking her tongue out at her sister. Nojiko rolled her eyes and said, just hurry up, I want to be ready when Vivi comes to get us. 3 hours later their doorbell rang and Nojiko went to open the door. Oh, hi guys. We're almost ready, you can come inside to wait, Nojiko told to Koza and Vivi who were standing outside. Thanks Nojiko, Vivi said, coming inside with her friend. She was wearing white shorts, striped top with 2 different shades of blue on it, and her green and black striped jacket was open. She also had white high-heeled boots and her hair was up in a ponytail. Koza wore simple jeans, a black t-shirt that said, Leader, and his usual brown coat and sunglasses. Where's Nami? Vivi asked. In her room, Nojiko said, the one in the left. Thanks, Vivi said and left for the room. Would you like something to drink? Nojiko asked from Koza, but the blonde just shook his head. No thanks. Just get ready so we can leave, he said. I'll go finish my makeup, then, Nojiko said, leaving to her room. Koza sighed, wanting to leave already. XXXXX. The party had already started since the first guests came about half an hour ago, but nothing had gone broken yet. But that usually started around 10 p.m. anyway, so there was no rush. Keep it down you bitch. Kid, a redhead from 3rd year, yelled to Margaret who was singing karaoke. He was a very short-tempered young man and his looks were a clear warning to not mess with him. Stop complaining, this is a party. And a party needs music. Margaret yelled back. You call that music? Yelled Killer, Kid's blonde friend. Nobody, except maybe Kid, knew his real name, so everyone called him Killer. Unlike the others, he had never gone to high school and was now working as a mailman. And that's what everyone always got good laughs from. Yes I do. Margaret yelled, do you think you could do better, huh? Killer rolled his eyes, muttering, like I'd fall for that. Hey Zoro, come to dance. Luffy cheered, dancing in the middle of the living room. Like hell I will. Zoro yelled, taking a sip from his beer. Vivi's here, Chopper said, hearing the doorbell ring. He knew that it was Vivi because she was the only one who bothered to ring the bell when they had a party. Luffy charged to the door, yelling, welcome. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is, In His Shadow by Mikila. Chapter 5, Truth or Dare. Hey Luffy, Vivi said with a smile as she came in with Koza and the 2 sisters. Nami glanced at Luffy. He was wearing simple jeans, red t-shirt and his old straw hat. She was happy that she and Nojiko hadn't dressed into anything too fancy. She was wearing a yellow skirt and a white t-shirt that had red text that said, Devil. Nojiko had a red ribbon with silver glitter in it on her head. She was wearing a short denim skirt, white top and denim jacket on it. Vivi-chan, Nami-san, it's good to see you. They heard from the kitchen and Sanji danced out. The girl's sweat dropped. And it's good to see you too Nojiko-san, we have some shared classes. You remember me, don't you? Sanji asked, kissing Nojiko's hand. Nojiko's eye twitched. Tashigi had warned her about this pervert. Who would ever forget your ugly face anyway? Zoro asked with a smirk, coming towards them. What was that, Marimo? Sanji asked. You didn't hear me. Zoro asked. Here we go, Koza mumbled with a sigh, leaving for the living room. How about we go to the living room too? Vivi suggested, wanting to get away from the starting fight. That might be a good idea, Nami said, quickly going after Koza with the other 2 close behind. She looked around herself in the living room, recognizing most of the people from their school. Looks like most of the quests haven't come yet, Vivi said, looking around. How many there usually is? Nojiko asked. I never really count, Vivi admitted, but the house is never too full, so don't worry. Both sisters had seen the later part coming because of what Tashigi had told them, but that was something they weren't going to say. When a crash was heard, Koza commented, "There went the first plate." The girls' sweat dropped. The party was a bit awkward for the girls at first, but when Nami got a bit drunk and Nojiko found someone to discuss with, it started to feel like a real party for them too. Some guys started to flirt with Nami and she flirted back, but if anyone tried to touch her, she quickly found better company. It was almost midnight when Usopp suddenly yelled, "Let's play truth or dare." "No," almost whole room chorused. "Why not?" Luffy whined, liking the idea. "It's childish," Koza said. "And boring," Zoro added. "You're just afraid you will have to tell something embarrassing about yourselves," Nami said with a smirk, "Haven drunk enough to play a risky game like truth or dare. Or they're afraid that we dare them to do something way too hard for them," Sanji added with a smirk. "Say what?" Koza asked. Now boys, it's nothing to be embarrassed about. Everyone has their secrets," Nojiko said, knowing that the two young men would fall for it any minute now. The said two glared at the sisters. 1 2 3. Bring it on. Both Koza and Zoro yelled. Could they be simpler? Helmeppo, a blonde ugly guy from the first year, asked from his pink-haired friend Kobe, also from the first year. "That's rude, Helmeppo-san," was the boy's only reply. "Yosh, who else is going to play?" Luffy asked. There was a silence and then, one by one, people started to come to Luffy anyway. In the end the game had 15 people. Luffy, Usopp, Zoro, Koza, Nami, Nojiko, Vivi, Sanji, Chopper, for some reason Kobe and Helmeppo, Margaret, Kaya, Killer, and by some miracle Kid. Zoro gave the bottle to Luffy and said, "You spin first." "Okay," Luffy said, spinning the bottle. It pointed Sanji. "Truth or dare?" Luffy asked, grinning. "Truth," Sanji answered, knowing that if he said dare Luffy would tell him to go make food for him. He knew he was right when Luffy looked disappointed. He thought for a moment and then asked, "Why do you always run after every single woman you see?" The whole room went silent, even those who weren't playing. All eyes were on Sanji, waiting for his answer. "Does it really matter?" the blonde asked. "Answer the question, coward," Zoro said. Sanji glared at him and then muttered, "It's just a habit." "That's it, a habit?" Koza asked, trying his best to hold his laugh. "That wasn't a real answer," Zoro said. "Shut up, Marimo," Sanji hissed, glaring at the swordsman. "Say again," Zoro asked, irritated. "Cut it out, both of you," Margaret said, knowing that if those two started a fight something would definitely break. "Spin the bottle already," Luffy yelled to Sanji, starting to get impatient. Yeah, Sanji said with a final glare at Zoro's direction and spin the bottle. It ended up pointing Nojiko. "Don't take a dare," Koza and Zoro warned her. Before Sanji even had a chance to glare at them, Margaret told to Nojiko, "I'd listen those two in this one if I were you." "Truth," Nojiko mumbled, deciding to believe Margaret. She realized that trusting the blonde woman was the right thing to do when she saw Sanji's disappointed face. The blonde thought for a moment before saying, "Tell me about your family." Killer chuckled and Kid yelled, "Come up with something interesting, damn it." "Shut up," Sanji hissed. He could have asked something more interesting, but he didn't because he was a gentleman. "Well, as you know, there's my little sister Nami," she started, but was interrupted by Killer, who said, "You don't look the same at all." "We're not blood related," Nami said simply, causing Zoro and Luffy exchange looks. "Then there's our adoptive mother Belmir and Jen, who's pretty much like a father figure to us," Nojiko finished. "You just couldn't come up with anything better," Killer mumbled, getting a glare from Sanji. "Could you spin the bottle, Nojiko-san?" Vivi said, wanting to avoid the fight that was about to break out. "Sure," Nojiko said and spun the bottle. It ended up pointing at Killer, making Nojiko smirk. "Oh shit," the masked man cursed, making the others snicker. "Truth or dare?" the violet-haired woman asked slyly. "Dare," Killer replied immediately. Nojiko thought for a moment and said, "Take your mask off." Everyone gasped, no one had seen that coming. No one asked Killer to take his mask off, absolutely no one. "No," the blonde replied. "You have to," Nojiko pressed. Sanji and Zoro both tensed, ready to jump between them if things started to look like they could turn ugly. "Forget it," Killer yelled. He stood up and left the place with heavy steps. Kid, not wanting to stay alone with the idiots, left after his friend. "Did I go too far?" Nojiko asked after she heard the front door slam shut. "Don't take it personally," Usopp said, "that guy just never takes his mask off." "So true," Margaret said, "I'm not sure if even Kid has seen his face." "But why does he cover it?" Nami put in. Everyone just shrugged. "Why don't you spin the bottle again, Nojiko-san?" Sanji said. Nojiko nodded. She spun the bottle and this time it ended up pointing Kobe. The said pink-haired nerd sighed and his blonde friend started to laugh. "Truth or dare?" Nojiko asked with a smirk. "Truth," Kobe half said, half asked. Nojiko smirked, but before she could say anything Margaret yelled, "I know a good one." "Go ahead and tell," Nojiko said with a smirk. Kobe gulped. This wasn't good. In his opinion Margaret was a sadist. She enjoyed making people embarrassed. But of course this was just his opinion. Margaret went closer to Nojiko and whispered her idea to her. When the older woman smirked, Kobe knew he was doomed. Tell us your biggest secret, Nojiko said, making the other guys laugh. What the hell's that supposed to be? Koza asked with a laugh. How do we know he's really telling his biggest secret anyway? Zoro added. Shut up, it was a good one, Margaret said, crossing her arms. Don't worry, I know what it is, so I'll tell you if he's lying, Luffy said with a laugh. You told him but not me. Helmeppo asked, offended. Kobe ignored him and mumbled. Luffy-san, you promised not to tell anyone. I won't tell anyone, I just say if you're lying, Luffy corrected. Sounds good, Nojiko said. Just spit it out, Kobe, it can't be that embarrassing, Zoro said. Kobe was still unsure, but he didn't want the others to think he was chickening out, so he spoke. My dream. Kobe's silent start is interrupted by Koza saying, is to be a ballerina. Almost everyone laughed at this or the fact that Kobe's face went deep red. The only ones not laughing were Luffy and Zoro, who hit Koza over the head. Sorry, Nojiko said from between her laughs, please continue. Kobe seemed to hesitate again, but continued as Zoro covered Koza's mouth. Ever since I was little my dream has been to found my own school. When nobody commented, Kobe continued, I've always studied hard for that, and because of that I have always been bullied and called a nerd. When he said the word, nerd, his eyes landed first on Helmeppo, then Koza and Margaret. The said three looked away, feeling slightly guilty. At some points I was even about to forget that dream, but what? Sanji asked, but Kobe shook his head. I already told my biggest secret, I don't need to continue, the pink-haired nerd said. He has a point, Vivi said. How boring, Nami complained, taking a gulp from her drink. She was already sounding pretty drunk. Spin the bottle, nerd. Nami, Vivi yelled. Don't mind her, she's always like that when she drinks, Nojiko told, she's not actually drunk yet, tough. Damn right, it takes much more than this to get me drunk. Nami yelled, now spin the bottle. Kobe did as was told and the bottle ended up pointing Zoro. Truth or dare? Luffy asked him while laughing like a crazy. Dare, was Zoro's reply. It's not like Kobe could or actually would come up with anything too embarrassing. Hey Kobe, let me. I know a good one. Luffy yelled. Okay, Kobe said. Zoro shrugged, he didn't care. After all, Luffy wouldn't be able to come up with anything too bah. Hey Zoro, go and call to that childhood crush of yours. Luffy yelled, making Zoro freeze as everyone was looking at him. Interesting, Margaret said with a smirk. I didn't even know the Marimo had a childhood crush, Sanji admitted. How the hell do you even know about that? Zoro barked at his longtime friend. Makino told me, Luffy said bluntly. Oh, but she did say not to tell anyone. She promised not to tell anyone, especially not to you, you damn big mouth. Zoro hissed as he got up. Where are you going? Margaret asked. To make the call, Zoro mumbled, and I swear I'll slaughter anyone who even tries to eavesdrop. When Zoro was out of the room, Usopp asked, doesn't the fact that he still has that girl's number mean something? You mean he still likes her? Chopper asked. Most likely, Sanji said. After about 5 minutes Zoro came back and Sanji couldn't help but ask, is she hot? Zoro blinked, asking, who? Luffy laughed as Sanji said, that crush of yours, idiot. Zoro was about to say something, but then he shut his mouth, blushing. It's none of your business, he mumbled, sitting down. Hey Zoro, do we know her? Usopp asked. How old is she? Chopper asked. I bet he likes older women, Koza replied to Chopper. Shut up, Zoro yelled, finally getting enough. Did you confess? Koza asked, making Zoro go redder. I bet he didn't have the courage to, Sanji said. I said shut up. Everyone laughed again. Nami got up, walking over to Zoro. She put her hand on his shoulder and leaned closer, asking, so who's hotter, me or her? The others, minus Luffy, were so busy laughing that they didn't notice that Zoro wasn't embarrassed, more like irritated. Get off, Zoro hissed, pushing Nami away maybe a bit too roughly. That's not a way to treat a lady, Marimo. Sanji hissed. Calm down, Nojiko said, he's only trying to be faithful to his girlfriend. The others laughed, but Zoro decided to swallow his anger and said, don't bother, that damn man-whore doesn't know what faithful means. The air in the room seemed to grow colder as the two men glared at each other. Zoro-san, maybe you should spin the bottle, Vivi said, trying to stop the fight that was probably coming before it even started. Zoro rolled his eyes and spun the bottle. It ended up pointing Nami, whose face lost its drunken look immediately. Truth or dare, sis? Nojiko asked. Truth, Nami said. What is the most important thing in your life? Zoro asked. Before Nami could say anything, Koza commented, I bet it's money. Koza, Vivi hissed. For your information, it's not, Nami said to him. Oh yeah, then what is it? Koza asked. My dream, was her simple reply. And that is? Zoro asked, raising an eyebrow. I don't need to tell you that one, she said. But we want to know. Luffy protested. Yeah, Usopp and Chopper chimed in. I don't care, Nami said, crossing her arms. They won't leave you alone before you talk, Zoro said with a smirk. So true, Koza agreed. Nami looked at them and then the three idiots who were staring at her. Fine, she said finally, giving in. Yosh, Luffy said, giving a high five to Zoro who was rolling his eyes. Then they turned to Nami, waiting for her to start. Well, as you probably know, there are many places in this world that no one has been to and places that nobody has returned from. Nami started, I want to chance that. I want to travel to these places and draw a map of what I saw. There was a silence as everyone stared at Nami. Soon Zoro's gaze moved from Nami to Luffy, who was grinning like an idiot. The green-haired man chuckled, knowing all too well what his friend was thinking. So you want to explore the unknown parts of the world like that one man who died because of a weird disease 22 years ago? Helmeppo asked. Nami nodded. What was that man's name again? Nojiko asked, putting her hand under her chin. I know. Luffy suddenly yelled. Gal D. Roger. Chapter 6. Gal D. Roger. Yeah, that's what it was, Nojiko agreed. I've heard of him too, Chopper said. It is said that no one knows exactly what the illness was that killed him, but it is said to have infected and killed most of his companions as well. Yeah, Nami confirmed. It's strange though, unlike Roger himself, there is no information about the funerals or even death days of his comrades. Maybe their bodies just weren't found. Usopp suggested, they did travel around the world so much, maybe they just simply weren't found. Don't think about it too much, Nojiko said with a sigh. Nami just brings this up every time she can, it's her obsession. No, it's not. Nami protested but was ignored by the others, who pointed at Luffy saying, here's another one. But the mystery behind the fate of Roger's friends is interesting, Luffy said, and you guys can't deny it. Uzu, sure, Margaret said, rolling her eyes. She and Luffy started arguing about it and the others decided that now was a good time to end the game. One by one they left the ring, going to do something else. I don't think you bring him up that often, Vivi said to Nami as they sat at the table with Nojiko and Koza. Yes she does, Nojiko said, but she had left that subject for a surprisingly long time. Well, she just dug her own grave, Koza said, taking a sip from his mug. What do you mean? Nami asked. Koza rolled his eyes and pointed at Luffy, who was still on the floor arguing with Margaret. He used to go on and on about Gal D. Roger, Koza said, and thanks to you he's probably going to start it again. Do you know why? Nojiko asked. Vivi shrugged, saying, all I know that his dream has been to find the city in a single piece, ever since he was a child. What's that? Nojiko asked and was answered by Nami. It is said that it was a city that Roger found, but that he died before he was able to tell anyone the exact location or drawing a map. But didn't his friends know anything either? Nojiko asked. They probably died before being able to give the information, Koza said. Not exactly, Zoro said from behind him, finally being noticed by the others. What do you mean? It is said that only Roger visited the city, his friends staying behind, Zoro explained. Where did you hear that? Nami asked. Even though she had investigated Roger and his group for years, she didn't remember hearing something like that. From Luffy, Zoro said. He didn't tell where he heard it from though, so it's probably false information. Probably, he's not very bright, Koza agreed. Koza, that's rude, Vivi hissed. And true, Zoro said. Well, he doesn't seem really the smartest person around, Nojiko said, glancing at the young man still on the floor. Trust me, he isn't, the other four said, waving their hands. But he's still a good guy, Vivi told, feeling the need to defend her friend. Yeah, no one's easier to fool than him, Koza agreed, for a different reason though. The other three laughed as Vivi started to scold Koza for being so rude. The party went on with loud music, dancing, beer, food, talking and broken plates. It was already really late when Nami and Nojiko left. The only quests that were still present were Koza and Vivi. Come again, Luffy yelled from the window to the departing sisters. I doubt that, Koza said, attempting to take bottle of alcohol but was stopped by Vivi, who snatched the bottle away. No way, you've already drank too much, she hissed, shaking her finger. No, I haven't, I'm not even visibly drunk yet, Koza protested, besides I didn't drink even half of the amount Zoro did. Hey, don't pull me into your fights, Zoro hissed. But he's right, you know, Usopp said, shaking awake sleeping Chopper. You stay out of this, Zoro said, taking another mug of alcohol. Oi, the party over already, Frankie yelled from the front door, coming in. Yeah, it's shitty 3 a.m. Sanji, who was washing dishes, yelled back from the kitchen. Frankie laughed as he walked to the living room. So the party was SUUPER? He asked as he threw his pants into the corner. Vivi blushed, immediately turning her head away. Pervert, Koza muttered. Thanks, Frankie replied. It wasn't a compliment. The others yelled. Frankie ignored them, as usual. Looks like two fell asleep already, he said. Two? Koza asked and looked at the direction Frankie was pointing at. Luffy had fallen asleep under the window. That idiot, Zoro muttered, going to wake up the younger boy with no results. Great, he's deep asleep. Why am I not surprised? Asked Sanji, who came to the room, finally having finished the dishes. Oi Luffy, wake up. It's no use, Zoro already tried, Usopp said, I think I'm going to bed. Yeah, me too, Chopper agreed. I suppose I should get this idiot to his room, Zoro said to himself, throwing Luffy over his shoulder. Night. I suppose we should leave too, Vivi said, and Koza stood up. Yeah, probably. It was nice that you could visit us, Vivi-chan, Sanji said, going to the love mode. See you again soon. Idiot, Koza muttered. Sanji glared at him but couldn't do anything since Vivi was standing between them. We'll see you in Monday at school, Vivi said, pushing Koza out of the door. Good night. Night, Frankie and Sanji yelled. After that they too went to sleep. XXXXX. Monday came and everyone returned to the school, some more willingly than the others. School sucks, Luffy complained as he sat down in his first class. We know, Usopp and Koza replied with sighs. Still having a hangover? Nami asked as she walked to her seat. Of course not, Koza said. I don't get hangovers, she said proudly, making Koza roll his eyes. What class do we have now? Luffy asked, suddenly making Nami sweat drop. History, she replied, making Koza bang his head in the table. Damn. I don't get it, why do you hate her so much? Luffy asked, making Nami blink. Hate who? I just do, Koza hissed just before the beautiful history teacher entered the room. Chapter 7, What does the teacher know? It was a lunch break, and Luffy was starving as usual. He sat next to Zoro, who was surprisingly the first one under the tree, and started to eat. Ooh, the Marimo is already here, Sanji said as he came together with Usopp and Chopper. You actually noticed? Zoro asked, raising an eyebrow. Why you? Where's Vivi? Usopp asked from Chopper, loud enough for Sanji to hear. Yeah, where's Vivi-chan? He asked. She had to stay and help the teacher. Great, so I'm surrounded by idiots, Sanji muttered, sitting down. The feeling is mutual, Koza said as he arrived together with Nami. Ah, Nami-san, you're eating with us today? Sanji asked, completely ignoring Koza's comment. That's what I was planning, Nami said, thinking, but maybe I shouldn't do that after all. That's great, Sanji said with hearts in his eyes, please come sit next to me. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Koza advised Nami, making her look at him with confused face. Careful, arrow cook, or you'll scare her away again, Zoro added with a smirk. A tick mark appeared to Nami's forehead. Were they making fun of her? Shut up, Marimo. How could I scare away such a delicate flower? Sanji hissed. A delicate flower. That's it. Bam, bam, bam. Will you three just shut up? Nami yelled, first punching Koza on the head and after that Zoro and Sanji. Ha ha ha, you guys got your asses kicked. Luffy laughed, making Nami glare at him. Chopper shrieked in fear, running to hide behind Usopp, the only other guy in the group that hadn't gotten Nami's wrath. Bam! Nami also hit Luffy in the head and turned to Usopp and Chopper. We haven't done anything, they screamed in fear. Nami sighed, took her lunch and sat under the tree without saying a word. What the hell was that for? Koza yelled, finally recovering from the shock. What? Nami asked, glaring at him angrily. Koza was about to say something, but Usopp quickly covered his mouth. Don't annoy her. Everyone was silent a bit longer, but then it changed into a normal lunch. Sanji flirting with Nami, Koza and Zoro making fun of him, Luffy eating and laughing. Usopp made sure to sit farther away from Nami for safety reasons and Chopper was sitting next to him. Yep, normal lunch. XXXXX. Nami and the others had geography again and she kept looking at the clock, wanting the lesson to be over already. She was so bored, these things were taught long time ago, at least to her. She felt her eyelids shut, about to drift to sleep. And in the east of Grand Line is a country called Arabasta. Now, what is its capital? Shanks asked. A silence followed. Don't tell me none of you know. Shanks asked, irritated. These things were already taught in the middle school, one of the guys commented. That's right, so what's the answer? When Shanks didn't get an answer he said, though so. Shanks shook his head, these guys were hopeless. This is what happens when you don't read the things you've once learned, you forget them. Shanks said, shaking his head. What about you, Koza? Luffy asked, getting the whole class attention. Yeah, you should know, you lived in Arabasta. Usopp said. Yeah, in the capital, Koza confirmed, Lubarna. A vein popped on Shanks' head. If you knew then why didn't you say anything? He asked. He would have crossed his arms but that was impossible with only one arm. Koza shrugged, answering, didn't feel like it ow. He yelped as the chalk Shanks had thrown hit him on the forehead. The whole class laughed. So, is anyone willing to tell me something else about Arabasta? Shanks asked, adding, but not you Koza. Koza just shrugged, it was fine with him. He looked at the class that had, once again, gone silent. So nobody knows. Shanks asked, maybe I should keep a little test about our neighbor countries next time. The whole class started to mumble in frustration. Why don't you ask from the Sleeping Beauty? One of the guys asked, pointing the now sleeping Nami. Shanks was annoyed. Nobody slept in his lessons, except Zoro but he slept anywhere anyway. He picked up another chalk and threw it at Nami's head, waking her up. Had a nice nap? He asked, making the whole class laugh. Nami blushed, muttering, "I'm sorry, I don't usually fall asleep in the class." Shanks ignored it and said, "Then maybe you are willing to tell us something about the country of Arabasta." Koza held in his laugh and the other gave Nami sympathetic glances. Being in Shanks' bad side was something no one wanted. "Ooh, of course," Nami said, "its capital is Alubarna, and it's a big country with hot temperature and a lot of sand. This is said to be caused by some natural disaster about 800 years ago. Not too far away from Alubarna, maybe about 300 kilometers, is another important town, Rainbase. However, getting there from the capital isn't that easy since there is about 50 kilometers wide Sandora River between them." The whole class was silent. Koza and Shanks were the most shocked ones, both of them knowing that it was all true. "Yeah, that's right," Shanks said, sweat dropping. When he heard the whole class sigh in relief he added, "But I'm still keeping the test." Some looked down and some muttered curses. "If you just hadn't fallen asleep," the boy behind Nami hissed, but she decided to ignore it. The lesson went on and Shanks was soon back to his cheerful self, and thanks to Nami's intelligence the same thing didn't repeat itself. When the class was over Nami asked, "What test was the teacher talking about?" "Basic geography that was already taught in middle school," Koza told. "Surely you don't have any problems with that one, do you, Sleeping Beauty?" Nami glared at him, saying, "For your information, I don't fall asleep in class often. This time was an exception." When Koza raised an eyebrow she continued, "And geography happens to be my best subject." "That's good to hear, because most of this class sucks at it," said Shanks, who was still in the class. "Especially that guy," Koza said, pointing at Luffy. "Hey!" Luffy yelled, making the last people in the class laugh. As their group of 4 left, Nami remembered something. "Hey Luffy, can I ask you something?" she said. The raven-haired teen turned to look at her and said, "Yeah, sure. Where did you hear the theory that Galdi Roger's friends didn't go to the Lost City with him?" she asked. It had been bothering her ever since she heard the theory from Zoro at the party, but didn't have a chance to ask earlier. "Oh damn, why did you ask that? Now he won't shut up for the rest of the day," Usopp said with a groan before Luffy could answer. Nami ignored him, waiting for Luffy's answer. "Oh that," Luffy said, "I heard it years ago from Shanks." He paused and added, "But I think he was a bit drunk then." The others' sweat dropped. "See, it's nothing to think about," Usopp said, trying to get them drop the topic. Nami stopped, looking back at the classroom. She knew that the teacher was still there, maybe. "Don't even think about it," Koza said. Like Luffy said, the teacher was drunk. "And he's not the most believable guy anyway," Usopp added. "Ague so," Nami muttered, making them sigh in relief. "But you won't lose anything if you ask," Luffy said, making Koza and Usopp glare at him. "That's true," Nami said, her face brightening. Luffy laughed as she turned around to go back to the class. "Are you guys coming too?" he asked, but the other two shook their heads. Luffy shrugged and went after Nami to the class. "Did you forget something?" Shanks asked as he saw his students. "No, Nami muttered, trying to find the right words. Now that she thought about it, this did seem stupid. There was even a possibility that Shanks didn't remember saying it to Luffy since he had been drunk and it was long ago. Well, it's too late to turn back now, she thought. Luffy, getting bored because of the silence, decided to help the navigator out. "We want to know, where did you come up with that theory about Galdi Roger's companions?" Nami wasn't sure if she should thank or hit her friend, so she settled on doing nothing. "Which theory?" Shanks asked. "I have told you many, haven't I?" Luffy thought for a moment before remembering. "The one where only Galdi Roger visited the city." "Oh, that," Shanks said with a laugh. Nami didn't like what she was hearing. She was positive that he had just made it up without any reason. "It was just a theory I came up with, but it doesn't sound like it'd be true," the redhead said, sitting down. Nami blinked. "What do you mean?" Shanks didn't answer, instead turned his gaze to Luffy. "It's not like him to leave his friends behind," Luffy muttered, looking at Shanks for confirmation. "Right." Shanks smiled, nodding. Nami was silent. Something really bothered her. Could it actually be that the red-haired teacher had known Galdi Roger? That's what it sounded like, and it was possible. He had been an adventurer after all. Could it be? She muttered. "Teacher Shanks, did you know him? Galdi Roger the first mean?" Luffy looked at her in surprise, and then at smirking Shanks. The red-haired teacher, however, didn't answer. Instead he took something from the drawer of his desk and threw it to Nami, who barely caught it. It was a piece of paper which she unfolded, noticing that it had an address on it. "If you want to know something, then that's the place," Shanks said, picking up his stuff and standing up. Before he left the class he said, "And you two better hurry, Ben is going to be angry if you two go late to his lesson." XXXXX. In Ben's lesson, which was PE, Nami found it hard to focus. All she could think about was the address Shanks had given her. Who or what was there, and where was it? "Miss Nami, Miss Nami." Ben's yelling finally caught Nami's, who was just staring at the punching bag, attention. "Yes?" she asked, looking at the tall teacher. "You're supposed to bunch it, not stare at it," he said. Nami blushed as she heard the other students snickering. Something wrong? No, not at all, Nami said, shaking her head. I'm just a bit tired, that's all. I bet you are. People don't usually fall asleep in class. One of the guys, the same one who sat behind her in the last lesson, yelled. Nami fought the urge to hit the teacher as he too laughed. Try not to fall asleep here, he said as he went to give advices to someone else. Nami sighed, starting to beat the punching back, imagining it was the teacher. XXXXX. Hey, Nami, Luffy yelled, catching up with her together with Usopp just before she left the school grounds. Yeah, she asked, turning to face him. Are you okay? You were spacing out in every lesson, Luffy asked. Nami was a bit annoyed and was about to ask, what? Were you watching me or something? But decided against it because the guy was so weird that he actually might have done just that, and if he did she didn't want to know more. I'm fine, just a bit tired, she told. It wasn't a lie actually, she didn't get much sleep last night and that's why she had fallen asleep in class, but in PE the address she had gotten from Shanks had been bothering her. That's good to hear, Luffy said with a grin, obviously believing her. Before he was able to leave, Nami called after him without a second thought, Luffy. Luffy turned to face her and she knew she needed to think fast for something to say or she would look like a complete idiot. Thanks for earlier, she mentally kicked herself right after saying it, doubting that the idiot knew what she was talking about. To her surprise he did. Don't worry about it, he said, at least someone knows what's actually interesting. Why are you looking at me? Usopp asked as they both stared at him, Nami having followed Luffy's gaze. She ignored him, saying, right, well if you ever need help with anything you know who you can ask from. Luffy titled his head to side, asking, who? Me, you idiot, Nami yelled, hitting him on the head. It was just a reflex, the guy got on her nerves. But she was definitely not going to apologize. Oh yeah, Luffy said with an idiotic laugh, rubbing his head. Idiot, both Nami and Usopp muttered. Luffy ignored them, saying, well we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, see ya, Nami said, leaving the school grounds. That boy was so weird, it made her feel uncomfortable. She took the address Shanks had given her out of her pocket, looking at it once again. Sabayati Archipelago, Grove 13, Shaki's rip-off bar. I'm starting to believe Koza's words about the teacher being a drunk, she thought with a chuckle. Sabayati Archipelago, it was actually a country near to a place called Red Line. And behind Red Line started the area where people didn't normally go, except for adventurers and scientists. That place was her goal, to make a map about those areas. But that has to wait a couple of years more, she thought, putting the address to a place in her back where she definitely wouldn't lose it. She was pulled out of her thoughts when her phone rang. She took it out of her pocket, looking who was calling. Arlong. Nami frowned, what did he want now? He had called her last night and she had made a mistake of answering and hadn't been able to hang up in many hours. And after she had there had been so many things in her head that she hadn't been able to fall asleep. Well, I've never been the kind of person who does the same mistake twice, she thought, shutting the phone and headed home. Chapter 8, Helping with Geography. The next morning Nami was walking to school together with Nojiko when Zoro and Luffy caught up with them. Hey Nami, wait up. Luffy yelled, making her hold back a sigh. What did that idiot want now? I'll go ahead, Nojiko said. Before Nami could protest she noticed that her sister was already gone. And the green head, Zoro if she remembered right, was too. What? She asked, trying not to sound too rude but to make her annoyance still known. Didn't work. Yesterday you said I could ask you if I need help, right? Luffy asked. Oh damn, she shouldn't have said anything at all. But since it was yesterday she couldn't say she didn't remember saying anything like that, not to mention his friend had been there to prove the conversation. Yeah, what about it? She asked, hoping that what he had in mind would be something easy and not take too much time. I was thinking if you could help me with my geography homework, Luffy said, since you're good at it and, like Shanks said, I suck. Nami blinked, wondering if she should agree to it or not. Well, it couldn't be so hard, so why not? Sure, she said, just then realizing why he had asked so soon, so I take it that you need help with studying to the upcoming test. Luffy grinned, saying, looks like I was caught. Nami sighed, thinking that she was surrounded by idiots. Now let's go, I don't want to be late from Mr. Ru's lesson, Nami said, starting to walk again. I love Lucky's lessons, Luffy cheered, going after Nami who sighed. This was definitely going to be a long day. XXXXX. At lunch everyone, excluding Luffy and Nami, glanced at Zoro nervously every another second. What? The swordsman asked, finally getting enough of them. Are you okay Zoro? Usopp asked. Yeah, why wouldn't I be? He asked, annoyed. You're reading in the lunch break. Margaret yelled. They all knew Zoro hated reading, so seeing him with a piece of paper, especially in the lunch break, was weird. What's so weird about it? Nami asked. Zoro never reads anything voluntarily. The others yelled, making Zoro roll his eyes. Don't make so much noise about it, he said. So what is it? Chopper, who was sitting next to Zoro asked and tried to peek. A letter. Before Zoro could answer, Sanji said, "Oh. A love letter." "No, you idiot," Zoro yelled, his face red. "Just an ordinary letter." "It's from Sabo, right?" Luffy asked, finally looking up from his lunch. "How did you know?" Zoro asked, folding the letter that he had already finished reading. "What else would you read voluntarily in lunch break?" Luffy said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Zoro chuckled, saying, "You have a point. Who is this Sabo anyway?" Koza asked. "My big brother," Luffy answered without missing a beat. The next sight was comical. Some of his friends spit the food they had been eating as others had their jaws hanging open. "You have an older brother?" Nami asked, also surprised but not understanding why it was so big deal to everyone. "Yeah," Usopp slapped his forehead. "Why, in all these years, you never told us?" he demanded. "And why did the Marimo know but we didn't?" Sanji asked. "Zoro lived near us when we were kids, so we often played together," Luffy said with a laugh, deciding to ignore Usopp's question. "The four of us always got into trouble." 4. Vivi questioned. "Luffy has 2 older brothers," Zoro explained, "and just so you know, those 3 got into way much more trouble than I did. And yet he has never told us anything about them," Usopp said with a sigh. "So Luffy," Margaret said, getting his attention, "are your brothers handsome?" Zoro bit back a sigh as Koza lectured Margaret that she shouldn't ask a guy if his brothers are handsome, and Margaret argued back. Everyone's attention returned to Luffy as he stood up and left without a word. "What's up with him?" Nami asked. "Who knows," Usopp said with a shrug, but a bit worried. That wasn't like Luffy at all. "Don't talk about his brothers anymore if he doesn't start it," Zoro said suddenly, causing everyone to look at him. "It's a sore subject." "Why?" Sanji asked. "That's for me to know and you to find out," Zoro replied, standing up and leaving. The others stared after him before returning to their lunches. XXXXX. When Nami left her last class, she noticed Luffy standing in the doorway, probably waiting for her. "Do you have your geography book with you?" Luffy asked, his usual cheerfulness gone from his tone. Looks like the mentioning of his brother really bothers him, Nami thought. "Yeah. Good," he said, starting to walk. "I was thinking we'd use the library, if you don't have anything in mind." Nami blinked, having hard time believing this was the same guy from last week. Looks like bad mood made him serious, more tolerable and, she had to admit, a bit scary. It was hard to say which side was better. "No, I don't," she said, "the library is fine." They spent a couple of hours in the library and Nami found out that Luffy wasn't kidding when he said he sucked at geography. He was terrible. The only things he seemed to remember about the neighbor countries were their climates. "Well, Agues, that's good for something, too," Nami thought with a sigh as they were finishing. One thing had surprised her positively though, Luffy had been consecrating amazingly well compared to what she had thought he would. It was good tough since it was already Tuesday and the test was on Thursday. Still, she knew Luffy wouldn't pass with the information he now had. "Should we do this again tomorrow?" Nami asked. I mean, just for sure. She didn't know why she had said that, she just did. She had already helped him like she promised, and that should be enough, right? "Sure, that would be a great help." Well, too late now since he already agreed. XXXXX. The next day at lunch, Nami had gotten worried. Luffy had acted like he usually did, in other words like an idiot. She wondered if he even remembered that he was supposed to meet her in the library after school. And now she was there, in the library, waiting for him. She hoped that he'd come soon, and at the same time she hoped he wouldn't come at all. She seriously didn't know what was wrong with her. "Nami, did you wait long?" Luffy called loudly as he noticed her, earning angry looks from other students. Nami sighed. This wasn't starting well. "No, I just came," Nami said, having only been waiting about 5 minutes. They sat down and started, and Nami was surprised how little Luffy remembered from yesterday. How could someone be so stupid? And on top of that, he wasn't focusing at all. Maybe I should get him on bad mood again, Nami thought, but dismissed the idea. She wasn't that cruel. Okay, maybe she was, but not today. "What is the name of the Sakura Kingdom's king?" Nami asked. Sakura Kingdom, a kingdom next to Grand Line, was unnaturally cold place. Just like in Arabasta's case, it is said to have been caused by a natural disaster, but no one knew for sure. "You mean the Ox guy?" Nami fought the urge to face palm. The king, Dolton, was said to have fought in the Civil War like a furious ox, which probably caused the nickname, Ox guy. "Yeah, him," Nami said with a sigh. "Do you at least remember why he is called Ox?" "Because he fought like an ox in the Civil War against that old king," Luffy replied without missing a beat. Nami blinked. This was something she didn't expect him to remember. Many people didn't. The Civil War had ended only a couple of years ago, and before that the name had been Drum Kingdom and its king had been one named Wapol. "What, was I wrong?" Luffy asked after Nami had just stared at him for a moment. "No," Nami said finally, "but how come you remember thing like that?" "The king is an old friend of Dad's," Luffy said, but after that clamped his hands over his mouth. "I should not have said that, please forget it." "Lu, and back to the studying," he yelled, picking up the book and started whistling. Nami blinked, being sure that he didn't want to talk about it. However, he said his father knew the king, or was it a joke? She sighed, she could try to fool the information out of him later. Right now she had to teach a certain idiot. XXXXX. The next day they had the test. Nami smirked as she saw the paper, she had been able to predict almost everything that was on it. She didn't know teacher Shank's ways, but she did know what teachers usually put in tests like these. I knew there'd be many questions of Sakura Kingdom, she thought with a chuckle. These things were usually in history tests, but the changes didn't happen long ago, so they were often mentioned in other tests and subjects, too. Even that idiot Luffy should remember something, Nami thought, her mind returning to their conversation the day before. Did his father really know the king? Of course not, it had to be a joke. She thought, shaking her head slightly. She had to focus on the test now. Chapter 9, Tickets. The next Monday they had geography again, and for once Luffy was sure he had passed the test. Well, he was always a bit too sure of himself, but this time he actually had a reason to be. In his opinion the test had went well, Nami had really helped him a lot. The class was full of chit-chat, but when the door opened and Shanks came in everyone fell quiet, going to their seats. Shanks walked to his desk without a word, throwing the check tests on the table. You know, I saw something weird yesterday, he started, making the whole class gulp. Everyone actually passed the test. For a moment there was a silence, and then half of the class cheered. Even Luffy. Koza asked. Hey, said boy yelled angrily. Shanks laughed at them. As weird as it sounds, yes he did, Shanks said, making the whole class laugh. What's so weird about it? Luffy protested, but was ignored by Shanks. Alright kids, time to start working, Shanks said. Can't we take it easy today since everyone passed the test? Usopp asked, but one look from Shanks told him the answer. Nope, now back to work. XXXXX. Wait a second Luffy, Shanks said after the class before Luffy could step out. What? Luffy asked, turning around. I passed didn't I? Shanks laughed. Yes, you did. Barely, but still, he said, and what I want to know is how you did it. What do you mean by that? Luffy asked, crossing his arms. Don't you have any faith in me? Nope. Hey, Luffy yelled, making Shanks laugh. So, how did you do it? He asks again. I got some help before the test, Luffy said, telling Shanks everything. After that he took off, hurrying to his next class. XXXXX. At lunch break Chopper hid behind Zoro as he saw Nami stomping angrily towards them. What's wrong? Kaya asks as Nami sits down next to Vivi. I'm so going to kill that idiot, the orange head mutters, opening her lunchbox. Usopp gulps, inching closer to Sanji. What idiot? Vivi asked. Let me guess, Koza says, pointing at Luffy who was coming towards them, that idiot. Nami nods, waiting for Luffy to sit down. When he does she stands up and walks over to him, hitting him on the top of his head. Ow! He yells, what was that for, Nami? You just had to tell the teacher didn't you? She asked angrily, now he wants me to help you and the other idiots in the class even more. Really? Luffy asked, earning another punch when he said, that's great. It's not great, I have better things to do than help idiots with geography. Nami yelled, so that's how he passed the test. Usopp said, finally understanding. Well this does explain it, Koza agreed, but I have no idea how the hell you were able to make him listen. Time of miracles isn't over, Sanji put in. Yeah, the others agreed. Shut up, I have passed before, too. Luffy yelled, making everyone laugh. Luffy pouted, but dropped the subject as he remembered that it was the lunch break now. Food, he cheered, opening his lunch box. Took him a while to realize, Zoro said, turning his attention to Koza who was rolling his eyes, what? Don't look, but Hancock keeps looking at us with a smug look on her face, Koza said, does anyone have any idea what she's up to? Margaret let out a sigh, getting everyone's attention. You know something about that, Margaret? Zoro asked. Margaret muttered something, but so quietly that no one heard. What? Luffy asked. Well yesterday we went to buy tickets to Portga's concert, Kaya started to explain, making Luffy tisk, but they were sold out. And what does Hancock has to do with it? Usopp asked. She has the tickets for herself and her sisters, and not just that, Margaret tells, keeping a small break. She even has extra tickets that she sells to her friends with higher price, but she refuses to sell any to us. But is it really that important? Vivi asked, I mean it's just one concert. It's not just a concert. Margaret yells, cutting her off, it's the farewell concert, the last one there'll be. It's still a concert, Usopp said, but shut up as Margaret glared at him. He's right Margaret, what are you so angry about? Koza asked. If you want I can sing for you, Margaret-chan. Sanji volunteered cheerfully, getting hit by Margaret. It's not the same at all, idiot. She yelled. Margaret is just upset, she's never been in his concert and now he'll never have a chance to, Kaya explained. It's her own fault for never going to one, said Hancock who came to them, with her sisters of course. Everyone doesn't have money like trash, Margaret shot back. That's your own fault for not working hard enough, Sander Sonia said, earning a laugh from Zoro. What's so funny? Is living with daddy's money hard work? He asked, making his friends laugh too. However, the Boa sisters weren't so happy. What do you know about anything? Hancock spat. I don't, Zoro replied, and I don't care to know either. The others chuckled at Hancock's face. Whatever, she said, I'll show you Portga's autograph after the concert, Margaret. What's the point? Koza asked, he's coming to this school 3 days after the concert anyway, getting his autograph wouldn't be hard. That's true, Hancock said, I've already told the principal that I can help Portgas to get used to the school. And try to get into his pants as a side job. Margaret asked, making some of the guys chuckle. Hancock's face went deep red. Margaret, you shouldn't have said it out loud, let people see the obvious by themselves, Koza said, making Zoro and Margaret laugh. If he'd had to spend time with you he'd ran away screaming because of your ugly face, Hancock told to Margaret. And if he'd had to spend time with you he'd ran away laughing because of your stupidity, Luffy shot back for Margaret, making everyone, especially Zoro, look at him in surprise. The swordsman had been sure Luffy wouldn't take part to a conversation that had something to do with his brother. Hancock gritted her teeth. And how would you know anything? She asked. I just do, Luffy replied, taking something from his pocket and handing it to Margaret. Here. Margate blinked, taking what Luffy was offering. She blinked again, looking at the item. It couldn't, but it was. How did you get this? Margaret whispered, holding a VIP ticket to Ace's concert. I have connections, Luffy said with a shrug and a goofy grin. Everyone was speechless, wondering how he did it. Zoro knew the answer, of course. Ace had personally sent them both VIP tickets. He wasn't going to say that though. How the hell did you get that? The Boa sisters yelled. Hancock's hands were shaking. How the hell indeed, Nami thought, Luffy's words in library last week returning to her mind. Surely that didn't have anything to do with this, but it was still a surprise, and this made her wonder if his words were true, too. Are you deaf or something? Luffy asked. I already said I have connections. Luffy, Margaret said, are you really giving this to me? Of course, I'm not interested, he said. Thank you, Margaret yelled, hugging him, thank you, thank you, thank you. Whatever, get off of me. Luffy yelled back, trying to get the blonde off of him as the others laughed. Margaret laughed too but got off like she was told to, glancing at Hancock who was glaring at them angrily. Don't think that you've won. Hancock yelled, and after that left with her sisters while the others continued laughing. That should teach her, Koza said. Hey Luffy, Usopp said, getting Luffy's attention, tell us where you actually got it from. Doesn't matter, Luffy said, his cheerfulness gone as he crossed his arms. But this is great, now you can go to the concert, Margaret, Kaya said. Oh yeah, sorry Kaya, I know you wanted to go too, Margaret said, but Kaya just smiled to her sadly. It's okay Margaret, just enjoy the concert, Kaya replied. Don't be sad Kaya, Usopp said, putting his arm around her shoulders, you have me. Is that supposed to make her feel better? Koza said, making the others laugh. You're just jealous, Usopp told him, but the blonde just rolled his eyes. So you wanted to go too, huh, Kaya? Zoro asked, and Usopp made a SSH sound so that they could chance the topic. Well yeah, but it's not that important, she said. Zoro smirked, saying, then you don't want this. Kaya looked up, seeing Zoro holding a ticket to the concert. And a VIP ticket on top of that. How did you? I have connections, Zoro said, deciding not to tell anything since Luffy didn't either. Come on guys, that's not fair. Tell us, Chopper asked, really wanting to know. Nope, Luffy said, standing up and leaving the scene. He had had enough of this conversation. Zoro sighed, deciding to go after his best friend. He'd need it now. XXXXX. It took Zoro a while to find Luffy, thanks to his non-existent sense of direction. He found him from his next classroom, sitting at his desk and looking out of the window. Luffy, Zoro called, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine, he answered, not looking at Zoro who sighed. He walked to him and sat on the desk in front of him. When are you going to forgive him? He asked, getting straight to the point. He was pretty sure he was the only one who knew the whole story, or at least most of it, about why Luffy had abandoned Ace. Ace, Sabo and even Makino had tried to ask him, but he had only answered that he couldn't say. He wasn't going to do that to Luffy. When I feel like it, Luffy said. Zoro was about to protest but stopped when he saw the smirk that was forming to Luffy's lips. Hey Zoro. Yeah, imagine Ace's face when Margaret and Kaya step in instead of us. Zoro blinked, and then burst out laughing. Oh shit, he said, that would be worth seeing. They both laughed for a while before Zoro said, but seriously Luffy, you need to move on and forgive him, he's your brother after all. It's not like we're blood related or anything, Luffy said and got whacked by Zoro. What was that for? That's not like you at all. Quote. Luffy, what? Is there something more about this that I don't know? Zoro asked. He had suspected it for a while, but now he got the best chance to ask. Luffy sighed. When? Luffy had no chance to continue because the door burst open and Usopp came in, arguing with Koza. Soon the rest of the class and Yasop came too. Okay guys, everyone to your seats, the teacher said. Zoro. Did you get lost again? This isn't your classroom, you know. Shut up. Zoro yelled with a red face as everyone laughed. He got up and left for his own class. If he was late again, Ms. Graham was going to kill him. As the lesson started, someone's eyes were on Luffy. Little did he know that this person had heard their whole conversation. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is In His Shadow by Mikila. Chapter 10, The Concert. 2 weeks passed and it was time for Ace's farewell concert. Luffy had locked himself into his room, refusing to come out to watch the concert from the TV. Zoro had given up a while ago and was now on the living room with Chopper, waiting for the concert to start. Are you seriously going to watch that, Marimo? Sanji asked, but got no answer. He was worried. Both Luffy and Zoro had been acting weirdly the past week. And it was definitely not like Zoro to watch something like that. The only things he watched from TV were some stupid swordsman things. Do you think we'll see Margaret and Kaya in the audience? Chopper asked from Zoro, getting Sanji's attention, too. Maybe, Zoro said, and keep your eyes open for Robin, too. Robin Swan, Sanji yelled, running to the sofa and sitting next to Chopper. You think she'll be there? Chopper asked, making Zoro nod. Most likely. Why would she be there, Marimo? Sanji asked, but got ignored again. The blonde sighed. Zoro was definitely hiding something. Ma, it's starting. Chopper cheered. Sanji sighed, starting to watch the concert. He'd ask later. XXXXX. Ace sat down on the sofa behind the stage, sighing. The concert had gone well and he had ended it with his favorite song, Memories, but that was not the problem now. Something wrong, Ace? The freckle-faced singer looked up to see his manager, Edward Newgate. I gave VIP tickets to 2 of my friends, but I'm not sure if they'll come, he said with a sigh. We've had our fights lately. Is that who those 2 were? Your quests? Asked Marco, the drummer, who just arrived. You mean they came? Ace asked, standing up. Can you send to the VIP rooms in 15 minutes so I can change? Why? You look good, Marco said, laughing as Ace glared at him. He knew Ace didn't like the outfits he was made to wear, like the punk rocker outfit he had now. Luffy's gonna die laughing if he sees me in this, and Zoro too, Ace thought. He knew Luffy didn't like waiting, but he would not let his little brother see him in this outfit. XXXXX. Margaret was so excited that she couldn't stay still even for a small moment. She was trying to make a good impression on Ace, so she had dressed in her best, black miniskirt, black boots with high heels and a bit too revealing white top, which in the right light was see-through. Kaya had a much simpler outfit, light yellow dress and yellow coat, her shoes being white high heels. They looked so different but still good. This so weird, I still can't believe we're meeting the Ace. Margaret giggled to her friend. Kaya just smiled, thinking it would be rude to remind Margaret that they would have met him at school anyway. XXXXX. So Luffy is coming? Robin asked from Ace, who had taken a quick shower and was now drying his hair on the couch in the VIP room. He was wearing simple light brown shorts and a yellow t-shirt that wasn't buttoned. He likes loose and simple clothes, there was no use in denying it. Yeah, I only sent VIP tickets to him and Zoro, it can't be anyone else, Ace told. Are you sure about that? Robin asked, adjusting her purple cowboy hat that matched with her purple skirt and corset top. Hi, purple boots finalized the outfit. She had a mature, perfect body, and no one would have believed she was already on her late 20s. What do you mean? Ace asked. You sure Luffy ain't coming with a girlfriend? Asked Sabo, Ace's brother who just came in. He had long blonde hair that was tied in a ponytail. He was wearing the same punk-styled outfit as his brother did not long before, just to annoy him. Ace burst out laughing. Luffy having a girlfriend? He asked, amused. The old geezer has an affair with Shanks before that happens. Robin and Sabo's sweat dropped. That was a bit too much. Maybe we should start with saying that you will have a girlfriend before that happens, shouldn't we, Ace? Robin asked with a knowing smile, making Ace blush. Despite his career, he had never dated. Don't pick on him, Robin, you know full well why, Sabo said with a chuckle. Shut up, both of you, Ace hissed, crossing his arms. They laughed. We must go now, Kuma-san is already waiting for us, Robin said. You go ahead, Sabo said, I'll catch up in a minute. Robin nodded, realizing that the brothers needed to talk about something. When she was out of the room, Sabo asked, is Luffy still angry at you? Ace sighed. Yeah, he confirmed, I don't get it, he said he was okay with it. Well, it's Luffy we're talking about, we might even be wrong about why he's so angry. But can you say any other reason why he would be angry? Ace asked. No, Sabo said, shaking his head, if you really want to know then try asking Zoro. Can't you try to make him talk? Ace asked, grinning as Sabo gave him a death glare. You do remember what happened last time I tried that, right? He asked. Yeah, you. No need to say it out loud. Sabo hissed, making Ace laugh. Anyway, the star said, you did get the information out of him back then. Yeah, but that had nothing to do with Luffy, Sabo said. Zoro would never break a promise, especially not to him. You're right, Ace said. For a moment they were quiet before Sabo spoke. I should probably go now, Robin and Kuma are waiting already. Yeah, have fun, Ace said. When his brother was already at the door he added, and Sabo. Yeah, don't get her pregnant, Ace said, dodging the pillow that was aimed for his face only a second later. Fuck you, Ace, Sabo said, slamming the door behind him. Ace laughed, looking at the clock. It would still take 5 minutes before Marco brought Zoro and Luffy. XXXXX. Margaret's night wasn't starting as well as she had hoped. Just a moment ago they saw a hot, young woman leaving the VIP room. The woman had looked at the oddly when she saw them and then just walked away. Maybe she was his sister. Kaya suggested, trying to cheer up her friend. I doubt that, people would know if a famous singer had a hot older sister, Margaret said with a sigh, raising her head as she heard the door to Ace's room open. Fuck you, Ace, they heard a blonde man say before he shut the door. When he noticed them he walked over to them, asking, are you two supposed to be here? Margaret was offended by that. Yes we are, we have the VIP tickets, she said with a smirk. To Ace's room, Sabo asked, suspicious. There was no way. When the girls nodded a thought came to him and he asked, did you, by any chance, get the tickets from guys named Luffy and Zoro? Yeah, Margaret said, do you know them? Sabo had hard time holding his laughter. Those two had actually given their tickets to two girls. They're so doing this to annoy Ace, he thought, coughing a little so that he wouldn't laugh. Yes, Luffy is my younger brother, Sabo told, making Margaret blink. So you're Sabo? Kaya asked, remembering the conversation in the lunch break a way back. He mentioned me, Sabo asked, making sure he wouldn't say Ace's name. Luffy's friends didn't know about Ace, that much he was sure of. Yes, a while back, Kaya said. What are you doing here? Margaret asked. I work here, Sabo said without missing a beat. He knew they'd ask that, so he had prepared a lie so that Luffy wouldn't be angry. Hey Ace, he shouted, your quests are already here, I'm sending them in. Sabo had hard time holding his laughter as he heard Ace yell, okay. You two better get going, Sabo said with a chuckle and took off. The girls looked after him for a moment before shrugging and going towards the door. Kaya knocked. Come in, Ace called, not understanding why they bothered to knock. His expression was full of shock and disbelief when two young girls entered the room instead of his little brother and his old friend. For a moment the three of them only stared at each other before Kaya broke the silence. Are we in the right place? I mean we have the VIP tickets and we were told to come here. Huh, yeah you are, I was just expecting someone else, Ace muttered awkwardly. Two guys around our age, the other one having dark and the other green hair. Margaret asked. She was starting to understand how they got the tickets. Luffy's brother was in good terms with Ace. Yeah, those two, Ace confirmed, you two friends of theirs. Yeah, we're in the same school, Margaret said. I see, Ace said, pausing, Oh, sorry, Margaret said, I'm Margaret, and this is my friend Kaya. Nice to meet you, Ace said. That was a lie, he was so going to kill his brother and the damn swordsman when he got his hands on them. They had gone too far this time. XXXXX. Margaret and Kaya's visit lasted about an hour, and after they left Ace were exhausted. They were nice, in a way, but Margaret was clearly a typical fangirl. Well, not the type to scream all the time, but you get the point. I know Luffy's angry at me, but this went a bit too far. Ace thought, deciding to call Zoro since Luffy wouldn't answer his call anyway. XXXXX. Hello, Zoro said, picking up his shell phone. You have some explaining to do, Ace said from the other end of the line. Zoro sighed, he had seen this coming. But he couldn't fight the smile that came to his face. What, you didn't like the girls? He asked with a chuckle. Very funny Zoro. Sorry, but just so you know it was Luffy's idea, Zoro told, knowing that Ace must have guessed it anyway. I wouldn't have done it my own, I know your fears after all. Shut up, Ace yelled, making Zoro laugh. Sorry, he said, anyway, Ace, there is something I need to warn you about.